Hi, this is Michelle. In this section, you will learn about quadratic equations. First, you will learn what a quadratic equation is, how to solve quadratic equations by factoring using the square root property, by completing the square, and using the quadratic formula. And you will learn about discriminant of quadratic equations and an application using Pythagorean theorem. First, let's think about quadratic equation. Quadratic equation means an equation containing a second degree polynomial, which means you will see x squared, x, and constant in the equation. So among those three, no matter what, you should have x squared if you want to have a quadratic equation. However, sometimes you only see x term or constant term. So the standard form of quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c equal to 0. In this case, a cannot be 0 and a should be positive. To solve quadratic equations, there are 4 different ways. The first one is using the factoring. Second one is using square root property and using completing the square. And lastly, quadratic formula. Now, even though I will explain all of them, whenever you are given any quadratic equations, usually you will try to see if you can use factoring, and if you cannot, then you will use quadratic formula. And also, if you want to use factoring, then you should have standard form. Also, if you want to use quadratic formula, you should have standard form as well. Then now let's think about how to solve a quadratic equation using factoring. Obviously, you should know how to factor trinomial to using factoring to solve your quadratic equation, right? So, let's think about how to factor a trinomial. Quick review. As most of you know, factoring is opposite operation of distribution. So, for example, if I have x plus 2 times x minus 3, if we fold this out, first term is x squared, and then negative 3x plus 2x minus 6. And if we combine the like terms in the middle, then we have x squared minus x minus 6. So, if you look at this form, when your coefficient of x squared is 1, then look at those two numbers. If you multiply those two numbers, then you will have negative 6. So this is the product of 2 and negative 3. And also, if you add positive 2 and negative 3, you will get negative 1. So which means the number in front of your x, which is the coefficient of x, is sum of those two numbers. So opposite way, let's assume we want to factor x squared minus x minus 6. Then as you can see, then first you have to check what you have for coefficient of x squared. If you have 1, this is simple. You will have two binomial, x plus a and x plus b. And as you've seen, those a and b, these are factor of 6. So usually I just draw one big x, and on the top I put b, on the bottom I put a times c. In this case, 1 times 6. So this 1 is b, and this negative 6 is a times c. Then think about pairs of factors, in this case 6. So 6 is 1 times 6 and 2 times 3. When you are writing those pairs, I want you to write them in order. Because if you have big numbers, if you skip around, it is really hard to see if you have all the numbers or not. For 6, we have two pairs, 1, 6, and 2, 3. And now think about those two numbers, because negative 6 is product of those two numbers. That means one number is positive, one number is negative. So actually when you are combining those two numbers, actually you are subtracting the number. Because of this, once you have the pair, if you have negative, you will think about difference of those two numbers, which is 5, and then which is 1. And among those numbers, usually you have more than two numbers. Find out if you have any number that is same as b without the sign. In this case, we have 2 and 3, right? Because we have negative 1 for b. And then write down those two numbers on your side. Now we have to think about sign of those two numbers. When your a times c is negative, we know one of those numbers should have negative sign. So now, when you are adding those two numbers, sum should be negative 1, so negative should go to 3. So in general, if your a times c is positive, then whatever you have on your b, both of the middle number will have that sign. If your a times c is negative, then whatever you have on your b, it will go to your right side, which is bigger number. Once you find those two numbers, now I want you to divide it by a. So divide it by a and write down the variable. So we have 2 divided by 1 over x in this case. So this number is a. And now we are done. And then look at each middle number. If you can simplify this fraction, you have to simplify this fraction. Otherwise, because we cannot do anything, just write down this is positive 2 over x and this is negative 3 over x. So your first factor is x plus 2 and your second factor is x minus 3. Now let's think about the case when our a is not 1. For example, if we have 2x squared plus 7x plus 5. The same idea, I will make a big X, and on the top, this is positive 7, which is b, and on the bottom, 2 times 5 is positive 10. Now we have to think about positive 10. For 10, we have 1 times 10 and 2 times 5, right? And in this case, because a times c is positive, that means those two numbers will have same sign, positive, positive, or negative, negative. So when you think about those pairs, now you would think about sum of those two numbers. So which will be 11 for the first pair and 7 for the second pair. And then we can see the second pair is 7, which is b. So put 2 and 5 for the middle number. And then, because we have positive a times c, 2 and 5 have same sign. And then, because the b was positive 7, so both of them should be positive and positive. And then divided by a, which is 2x, and divided by a, which is 2x. And in this case, as you can see, we can simplify the first fraction. So divided by 2, divided by 2, we have positive 1 over x. Second case, we cannot simplify any further, so positive 5 over 2x. So when you are factoring 2x squared plus 7x plus 5, the first factor is x plus 1, and second factor is 2x plus 5. Example 1. Now we are solving quadratic equation by factoring. So first, when you want to solve any quadratic equation by factoring, you have to check if you are given the equation in general form. Because we have equal to 0, then we do have general form here. Then look at the left side. As you know, we factored this one already. X plus 2 and x minus 3 equal to 0. Once you can factor the left side, because we have equal to 0 and we are multiplying two numbers and equal to 0. So when you are multiplying any numbers and getting 0, that means at least one of the numbers should be 0. Call it a zero property. So we can say first number, which is x plus 2, could be 0, or the second number, x minus 3, could be 0. then now we have two linears. Solve the linear. So x plus 2 equals 0. Subtract 2, subtract 2. So x equals to negative 2. Same. X minus 3 equal to 0. So add 3, add 3. So x equal to positive 3. So in this problem, our solutions are negative 2 or 3. Or you can write it as negative 2 or 3. Now let's think about the second example. Okay, if you look at this equation, this is not in general form. So the first thing you have to do is move two terms on your right side to the left side. To do that, we have to add 9x and subtract 5. Add 9x, subtract 5 on your left side as well. And these are gone. We have 2x squared plus 9x minus 5 equal to 0. So now we have to factor the left side. So let's make big X. So on the top we have positive 9. On the bottom 2 times negative 5 is negative 10. So now we will think about negative 10. 10 has two pairs, 1 10 and 2 5. And because 10 is negative, we have to think about difference of those two numbers. This is 9 and this is 3. So between these two pairs, the first pair will work for this trinomial. So now let's write 1 and 10. And to decide the sign, because a times c has negative value, so we should have one negative and one positive. And because b has positive, then your right side, which is bigger number 10, has positive. Then the other one should have negative. And now divided by a, which is 2x, and then divided by a, 2x. So if you look at the left side, we can simplify, so negative 1 over 2x. If you look at the right side, you can simplify divided by 2, so positive 5 over x. So if you factor 2x squared plus 9x minus 5, it should be 2x minus 1 times x plus 5. So we can set this one equals 0. So now, because we are multiplying those two numbers and equal to 0, so the first factor, 2x minus 1, could be 0, or second factor, x plus 5, could be 0. So let's solve the linear. So add 1, 2x equals 1 and divided by 2. So first solution is 1/2. Second one, subtract 5, subtract 5. So x equals negative 5. So now we can say the solution is negative 5 or 1/2. Or you can write it as set notation, negative 5, 1/2.